Hey everybody, and welcome to this new video on Android application development. In today's video we'll go a bit into the theory behind the activities and how we can use activities in our application to build a nice application. Let's get started with the video. So the first question that we need to address is, what are activities? Well, the model on the right here displays it pretty well. Activities are like the middle of our application. They control both the user interface, they control the data they get from a model, and they might control or they form the interface to the system resources. However, the model on the right here is quite overly simplified, because often our application looks a bit more like this. The two blue boxes are the activities that we might have, and right now it's 2, but we might even have 6 or 10. And they control different UIs, they might get data from the same model, they both control the system resources, and there might be some broadcast receivers and some services. So it might be a little bit more complicated. One thing that we do have to look out for, because activities control so much, is that we don't create a God activity. We are able to write all of our code within the activity class. However, it is wise to try and create different classes when you have, for example, computation that needs to run, or you have to do some logic. The example we see here on the right is from a very simplified application, which is why everything is within the activity and defined there. But this is an example of a godlike activity. So now that we know what activities are, it is important to know how Android handles activities. So how are they loaded? And it's a good thing to know that Android runs activities in a single thread. We will discuss threading and multi-threading in a later video in this series, so make sure to look forward to that one. But what's important for now is to know that it is a single thread, and once we load an activity, there's no explicit way for us as developers to shut it down. Android runtime will shut the activity down based on whether it's in the background, whether we still use it, whether we still need the data. But if it needs resources and an activity is in the background, Android runtime might shut it down wherever it feels like it needs to. So for us as developers, that means that it's important that we save the application state if that's needed, because it might be shut down by Android. So one thing that is good to know is that there is a thing called the backstack. So let's look at this little picture here on the right. Because this is how a normal application process goes. So when we start, there will be a single activity, and when we navigate to the next activity, that single activity we started with will be moved into the background and into the stack. So when we move to a new activity again, the second activity will also be moved into the stack, and this is so that we can navigate back to that activity as well. And once we navigate back, the activity that we were on will actually be destroyed, so it will not go into the backstack, but we will go back to our activity 2 in this case. So when does Android decide to destroy certain things, and when does it just keep it in the backstack? Well, it does that based on something that's called the activity lifecycle. And here on the right we see the complete lifecycle of an activity. So let's go through this. So we see here in the top that when we launch an activity, we go through 3 lifecycle callbacks, namely onCreate, onStart, and onResume. And that is where we will see the application running. When it has a user interface, it will be displayed to the user, and we will be able to interact with it. However, when another activity becomes a foreground activity, our existing activity will go into an on-pause phase. And from this on-pause phase, we are able to go directly into onResume and go back to our activity, which means we still have its data, But if resources are needed, Android might kill the process and we need to go through our onCreate again. So there's 3 phases in which Android runtime might decide to kill our application. And those are the onPause, onStop and onDestroy phases. So we have to account for this because once we go into these phases, we don't know when it's being destroyed. So if we want to keep data, we need to save it. And we can actually do that within this lifecycle callbacks. There's also some user action that directly trigger some of these lifecycle callbacks. So I listed some on the left here. So the home key always directly goes into onStop. And the back key always goes directly into onDestroy, just as a screen rotation and a settings change. So this is important to know because when we have an application and we have it in a horizontal mode and we rotate our screen to a vertical mode, we don't want to lose the data that we have in that activity. So it is really important to save our data in that case when that rotation happens, or when we go into an on-pause phase, for example, we can save the data. Let's look at ways to save the data then. Now, first of all, Android has a thing called bundle. I really recommend you to look into this bundle because it's quite a nice thing to use. However, I find it more interesting to work with something called shared preferences. This is a framework of Android that is based for little amounts of data that you can store in key value pairs, and it is a really nice way to save certain settings or save certain preferences. However, when you acquire more data that needs to be saved, you might want to move to a database instead. And the way to create a local database with Android is by using something called Room. And yeah, it's a really nice way of creating a local database. Obviously, you can also use a database on the internet or a server somewhere. If you want to do that, I recommend you to look into Firebase. It's a nice way to start doing this. But we won't look into that in this course at all. And last but not least, there's a way called serialization. It's a little bit more cumbersome, I would say, but you basically have a class that you can serialize, which saves it to the local data storage of your phone. And you can deserialize it wherever you need it in the application to regain access to the class data, basically. So obviously, we haven't gone much into detail on these 4 storage methods within this theory session because the video would get very long. However, if you feel like you want to learn more about an individual storage method, please let me know in the comments below and we might be able to create an individual video on them. So for now, let's move on to how to switch between activities. Because if we have activity 1 and we want to switch to activity 2, there's something we need to do, and that something is called an intent. And here on the bottom, I've already inserted the one-liner you might want to use, which is start activity, and that requires an intent as argument. So in this case, we give it a new intent. And within that intent, we always need to specify the context where we are to the context where we want to go. So in this case, it is this is the context where we are now. And the new activity.class is where we want to go. So that is a nice, neat one-liner to transfer between 2 activities. However, it might also happen that we want to add more data into this intent. For example, when we have a form, we filled something out, and we want to know that data in the next activity. In this case, we can add extra information into the intent. And then we first create the intent itself, just as we did in the one-liner. But then we use something called intent.putExtra, and we give a tag to the data so that we can extract it later. We have our input, and then we start the activity with the intent as we created it. So then the data is sent from our activity to the next one, and there we have to extract it from the intent, which we can do by these 2 lines where we say get intent and then we do get string extra, for example, if we've added a string, and then we reference it with the tag that we've given it. So that's our way to like transverse our application and actually add information. Sometimes it might also happen that we want to start a new activity, but we know that we get back to our previous activity with some result. And in the past, we used to have a function called start activity for result, but that one is deprecated now. And since like 6 months, there's a new way of doing this with the activity result launcher. But I won't go into detail on that on this video, but I recommend you to check it out if that's something you want to use. And if you want to see a video on it, please let me know in the comments as well. So then, last but not least, I also want to mention something of the fragment lifecycle. A fragment is a reusable portion of your app's UI, and it's always hosted within the activity. So it's already within the activity's lifecycle as well. But it's important to know that the fragments also have their own lifecycle. So if you want to start using fragments, I recommend you to read up on this a little bit, but I don't think it will be so much within this course that you really need to use it much. And that's actually it for this first theory video. I hope you learned a little bit about activities, how they work, how we might be able to use them in our own applications. In the next videos, we'll go into some practical examples of how we can use activities to navigate, for example, or how we can use fragments to navigate through an application. So be sure to check out those. If you like this video, don't forget to give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, and I really hope to see you in the next video.